Welcome to the next reel, the film board. We are going to talk about. This is our very special episode this week. This is the big crossover episode where we begin to make the migration, the shift, the change, the transition, the transference between magic, films about magic, to films about stealing things. And so we have gathered here today to take on Now You See Me.
Or just call it Now You Don't.
And that's Andy Nelson over there. Hello, Andy.
Hello.
And Steve Sarmento, you're over there.
My name is Michael Caine.
And over there next to Michael Caine is Chadd Stoops.
I'm Morgan Freeman.
I'm Pete Wright. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you check in at thenextreel.com. You can subscribe to the show for free. You can go to facebook.com/thenextreel and subscribe again in iTunes. Make sure it's delivered to you for free every week. And that is the end of the old business. Where would you like to begin, gentlemen?
So we should probably spend the first part in a spoiler-free discussion, I'm
Yes.
assuming. Okay, so that sort of lets me know what's
fair. What's fair game?
what's fair game. So I'll start with, I guess, I enjoyed it. I had fun. There was magic. There was the Hulk. There was little James Franco. There was a weird logo for the Four Horsemen that I kept waiting to see something happen with. I was wondering about throughout the whole movie, and Morgan Freeman. What more could you ask for in a film?
Well, that's true.
Well,
Probably not much. Clearly not much.
But they knew they had everything they wanted in a film.
Okay.
Oh, dear.
Chadd?
I was saddened by this film.
And that's actually sort of rare for you, right? You kind of are a liker of most movies that others don't.
I really wanted to like this movie, but the second anybody opened their mouths, my stomach, I felt like I ate bad cheese.
Second, anybody open their mouths? Wow.
Dialogue. Well, first of all, I don't want to say that this movie. Here is my in a just a quick one or two sentence thought. I think that it looks like a great idea on the surface, and it really is on the surface a great idea. However, had they taken the time, I feel like, to have had like 6 different writers, one for the idea, and another really great writer for the dialogue, and another idea, somebody else for the characters developing, they could have had something really great. But it seemed like they had the good idea, and then they just threw that out there as the entire movie was this great idea. And that's what was hard to watch, because the rest of it around it just sort of crumbled, I felt, for the entire movie. And I feel that way because
Are you there? Did you swallow the microphone?
Did I?
Yeah, you broke up.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So I felt like that the actors weren't put in a place where they could really do the best job they could. The only person I felt that I enjoyed was Woody Harrelson's character throughout. I thought he was fun, but I just had a hard time with the other people believing that they were even, magicians, or believing that they were really a part of it. It felt like they were detached, and they had to kind of rifle through this very fast movie. So, but other than that, the tricks were fun. I just wanted to open up by saying I didn't feel, as for an actor, from my standpoint, watching it, I felt very sad watching the other actors trying to deal with the dialogue in this movie. Movies lines just like, I'm taking over the case now, so abracadabra. That's just like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Andy.
Yeah. I think we all went in really, really wanting to like this film. I mean, the trailer got me excited the first time I saw it. When they released the opening clip, I got even more excited. Everything looked really, really fun, and it looked like they were going to do kind of a really unique film. And as I started watching it, and I don't think I had quite the same reaction Chad did as far as some of the dialogue and stuff. I mean, there's definitely issues, but really for me, it just fell down to the story, which it just was. It felt like a convoluted mess, and like they were trying to play all these tricks on us constantly that didn't really. Sometimes I could buy into them. Sometimes I was like, okay, I see where they're going, and then I was like, okay, well, I see where they wanted me to be going, and now I see where they're going, and I could see how they were playing me and stuff. But by the time I got to the end, I was just like, I really felt like the story was almost like they were just wanting the story to function in a way where it was constantly tricking you, and it didn't really lead to anything. And I enjoyed watching it, but the more I thought about it, I'm like, well, none of it really makes sense. There's no logic behind any of it. And as you think about it, and I almost would guarantee on a second watching, I feel like it would just completely fall apart because none of the story pieces really, there's no logic. And a big problem I have also with the story is I just don't even know who I'm supposed to be following. I kept, feeling like I was shifting. Who's the protagonist of this film? Who am I following? Who am I supposed to be liking here? And who is it who's guiding me through the story? And it never really settled on anybody. And by the time I got to the end, I still didn't know who I was following. It was very confusing. And in the end, yes, I enjoyed watching it on a cursory level. As I left the theater and I started thinking about it, the whole thing fell apart for me. And I found myself getting more and more frustrated with the whole idea of what they did with it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I fell down on this one too. And I think all of us. I mean, we've been talking about this movie for so long because it seemed to have all of the elements going into it that really light us up about movies. The idea of a magic film, which I think we're on the record as saying, magic films are fantastic. And kind of channel for me that inner 12-year-old that I just crave. And heist films, please give me this is an Oreo cookie of entertainment for me, and that it was so compelling that through the first and second acts I really was deeply I was so into wanting it to be great that I found myself actively sort of chanting the ignore that mantra, just ignore it, just let it go, let it go, let it go. Because then they would get on stage and they'd do one of their three, sort of horseman acts, and I would get kind of excited about it. And then the third act comes around and it's just a house of cards. It just falls completely apart. And I it felt like I couldn't quite ignore that anymore. I'm right with Andy on I have no idea who to root for. By the end of it, I didn't know who I was supposed to care about or why. Was this a caper film? Was this a revenge flick? Was this an audition for a secret magical cult film? That as far as I know, that could be a whole new genre. And so those things, I think the movie is at great odds with itself, and at great odds, I think, with all of the threads that they attempted to, as Andy said, they're constantly trying to trick us, and so there are so many threads at work in this film. I think it just unravels by the time you hit the third act and realize that there was no way to see coming what happened. When are we going to do spoilers? Are we going to do that soon?
Let's give it a minute.
All right, you got more to say. Okay, I just feel like the final reveal. If I go back and watch this movie, I feel like there is no way for me to pull apart the final reveal, apart from being enormously cynical and saying, well, of course it's that guy because all the fingers are pointing elsewhere. So, there's no way to go back and rebuild the internal logic of the film to try to deduce who is the ultimate, the ultimate kind of perpetrator, apart from being just that kind of person. And that's, that if you're that kind of person, you may really enjoy this because you'll have seen it coming all along.
Right.
Well, I think with the third act, what happened was it couldn't decide what story it wanted to tell, because I think really what this could have been expanded into, if taken in the right direction, like a little 6-part series of the Four Horsemen. You've got these four, independent street magicians. Some of them, two of them have a history together as, an assistant to the other. And there was some interesting dynamics between them. And I think that's, what made the scenes with Woody Harrelson really exciting. There was this tension and dynamic between these four people that are drawn to something and are sort of agreed to work together, but they still don't get along. I wanted more of that, because we jump and then they're doing these shows and we have these little scenes with them. Still, there's some tension. They're in this because they want to get to the end, but they don't necessarily get along. And that was an interesting dynamic that, if played out over several episodes of them doing more shows to build towards this big mysterious thing that they don't know who the sort of puppet master is, but they're just following these directions. To me, that would be a very interesting story of how they have to work together and agree to disagree and just put those differences aside because they have this common goal. That's a movie I would really enjoy seeing, or a series based on these characters.
That could be a really cool series that they could expand on. I wish that they had the opportunity to do that, because I did enjoy the idea of what you're talking about, these four magicians coming together to be drawn into the eye cult, this ancient, whatever it is, ancient Egyptian cult or whatever, which, as it is in the film, it only holds together in the fact that it's them. That's the only reason that they're doing these shows. But it could have been, you're right. I mean, if they had done it in a different venue, like a TV series or a mini series or whatever, it could have turned into something else. Unfortunately, it's not. This is what it is, which is
And what's interesting about that and I agree with you. And the whole time I kept thinking, gosh, this is the wrong medium for this story, right? And I didn't think immediately about a TV series or a series of films. I thought about a graphic novel. This is where you get that chance to really explore each of the characters, but in either case, as I'm watching this film, I keep thinking to myself, man, this feels a lot like the tone and scripting of a caper television show. Leverage, it kept coming to mind. It just felt like this is going to be your Sunday afternoon TBS guilty pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it that's just where I was. I was never able to. I didn't know what they wanted me to get out of it, right? Because when you watch these caper movies, you either want to have complete faith in the fact that the magicians really are the smartest people in the room, right? And that everything they do, every trick they pull off, every time they are, almost caught but not, that it's because they are the smartest people in the room. And yet the hints, the breadcrumbs they kept dropping for us were not that. It was always they were about to get caught, and their relationship was shaky, and that they may not be. And in fact, the resolution is, they weren't. I did it. They were not the smartest people in the room.
And the worst part is that in the beginning, when I saw, because watching Jesse Eisenberg, it felt a little as well that he was Mark Zuckerberg in this movie, playing.
I think he's gonna have a hard time shaking that.
He like Mark Zuckerberg in this movie, like he really was kind of like Mark Zuckerberg, what he would have done if it would have been about, Mark Zuckerberg as a magician.
It's his parallel life.
There's an argument to be made that that's true.
But I felt like they were trying to deceive us about who they were, because it seemed forced when he was in the jail cell or where they're in the holding room. I just felt like it was like, oh, this is an act. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to go with the fact that maybe the trick is it's deeper. But I felt like what you guys are trying, like what you were saying a lot about it, was that it didn't allow you to follow anybody, but then it didn't allow you as the audience a chance to have some sort of idea about what was the trick or what was happening. So they kept revealing these tricks, as the movie goes on, but you don't ever feel this sense of you're part of the film. It's just this kind of constant joke, like they're kind of doing this whole thing to show you something, but it's really not allowing you to involve yourself. And when that
Well,
happened,
and so that's a question. So, Chad, let's go around. Chad, when you, as you're watching the film, you were getting into the third act. Who did you have picked pegged for the ultimate perpetrator? What did you think was going to happen? Like who were you who were you paying the most attention to?
I honestly had no clue. I mean, I had no clue who it was. I had no idea. I felt like okay, it's going to be somebody that. I was like, okay, maybe Michael Caine. But then I thought that doesn't make any sense. But then I thought whoever they're going to show, it doesn't matter because it's not going to make any sense at first anyway.
Exactly. That was the thing. I thought, even for a second, I was like, oh, it's Morgan Freeman's assistant because why is she always there?
Right.
You know, it's like it's going to be somebody that we've seen. But then when they reveal who it is, I'm like, okay, if I watch this a second time, knowing what I know now about this character, does the way that character behaves throughout this film now make sense? Because, you know, that was I'm like, or is it part of the show of, well, I've got to behave this way because I'm playing a part in this grand scheme of this trick, this show. So, and that gets to the point of, wow, somebody that not only has apparently a ton of money to put all this stuff together, but just a deep understanding of human nature to be able to manipulate everybody to make everything happen just that way by, you know, saying the right things and reacting these ways to make sure everything goes that way. It had me up until that point, and then I thought, okay.
And that's the thing, Steve, you're kind of hitting on, well, kind of sort of like hitting on, I feel like, is that when you're trying to figure out who it, like in the Matrix, we're all like, oh, who's Morpheus, right? And then they eventually reveal who Morpheus is, right? And that's like, okay, and then who's this person? Well, okay, then we eventually see who this person is. And it's a different movie, but the thing is that when you want to know what the Matrix is, or you want to know what, you know, and comparing it to that, you find out what it is. I don't think I ever figured out what the big eye thing was. I got that is who he is, but it felt like they could have done that with anybody in that film.
Yes.
And around it at the end of that. They could have written this film, made it, and they go, and all the actors would have gone, gosh, who is it on the final day of shooting?
I think Chad, oddly enough, dropped out right as he was spoiling the movie.
Well, the thing is, I think it could have been anybody. They could have written like 10 different alternate endings with it being this person and this person with this, you know, because and that was the part, even in the end, I'm like, okay, was the motive, because there were two motives. There was the revenge thing, but then there was also the, oh, I'm going to take these people through this sort of trial to prove themselves as magicians. So I was like, there were two sort of goals or objectives to this whole grand plan. But that's what confused me of what was the ultimate purpose, because we've got the eye and this initiation thing, but also this sort of self-serving revenge plot. And honestly, it could have been any of those characters that could have been connected to that. Either of those.
Well, and that's the point. I mean, you say they could have written 10 alternate endings. Yeah. I think they did and chose to use 6 of them. Right? I mean, here, as they're wrapping up each of these, the fact that this ended up being something of a revenge plot, or I should say something of an audition plot, was a complete surprise. Like, there was zero setup of the fact that these guys were going to be, you know, indoctrinated into something bigger. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important omission, and one that really hurts the film, because I think they could have made something, you know, sort of much more interesting about that journey, and the fact that it was a journey to be able to work together. Because I don't think anywhere in the film do we have this real sense that this team, except for when they're on stage, do we have any real sense for this team being something bigger than the sum of their parts. And I think that's a real frustrating thing. What you really want to see in a team movie like this is a team that comes together and actually ends up working together in a way that is, you know, substantively different than the work that than what you see in the, you know, when they're not together. They put on these really fancy shows, but ultimately when they're together off stage, they're just sort of chaotic.
Yeah, it was a little sloppy with all of that. And, you know, things, I mean, have we entered spoiler? I think we've kind of have crossed into spoiler zone, right?
I think I broke that earlier.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't named anybody in particular.
Well, Chadd did in a in a microphone drop.
Did he say he's angry all the time, and that's the trick?
And there we go.
Yeah, we're definitely spoiling it now. I thought early on as I was watching the film that they were setting it up to be Melanie Laurent as the person, and I'm like, okay, so she's the person, and then as I was going, it became really obvious that they were setting her up, and they actually point out, she's the one, and I'm like, okay, well, that's too obvious. They got me on that one. But then as I thought about it, I'm like, it doesn't really make sense for any of these people. And that's when it came to this point where it's just like, it's complete nonsense. And the more that I thought about it, there are moments like when Melanie Laurent's character is filling Mark Ruffalo, the idiot about magic, about this great magician who did this trick that took so long. It involved, putting a card in a tree 20 years before he then did this other trick where he cut it in half. And, Mark Ruffalo's like, oh, yeah, that's a great little magic trick, blah, 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 only to have that tie into the end because Mark Ruffalo had been planning it all along. It's like, how on earth would she have coincidentally come up with that story to tell him? And, it just, things like that, just, it doesn't hold up. It doesn't make any sense on thinking about it after the fact.
Well, there was a little bit of a time because when they first meet Morgan Freeman, there's that whole issue of, the magician whose career he basically destroyed. And so that introduces that character that is kind of mentioned throughout. But again, with the Mark Ruffalo's character, I'm like, oh, at one point I was like, oh wow, he's the stand-in for the audience. He knows nothing, so it gives these characters a reason to explain these aspects of magic because he's just this complete, he's completely ignorant of apparently anything having to do with magic because everybody's always having to explain to him, oh, here's this secret society, here's this, and this is why you have to do this. And I'm like, so I thought, okay, that's sort of our in, so I'm going to identify with this character. He's, we're going to discover things through his, but then it fell apart so quickly after that.
The trick of the movie. The trick of the movie is not to get to know any of the characters.
That's right. We're looking too close. We've got to watch this movie from across the street.
That may improve things.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be Common, the Evans
or Michael Kelly, the tranny.
Yeah.
FBI agent.
It was definitely the tranny FBI agent. I was frustrated. I found myself frustrated with the second Four Horsemen film, or Four Horsemen thing. I think trick started. Really it began the long, I should say, the short unravel for me. It's that we had built up this relationship of, that there were going to be 3 shows, right? Because the first show they said was, part 1. And that Michael Caine is really rich, this character, Arthur Tressler. And so there is this presumption as a member of the audience that the whole thing is out there to dupe Michael Caine, right?
Yeah.
And it turns out that that ended up not being the case at all because it was the second show that was out to dupe Michael Caine. They got his money and gave it all back to the audience after the second show. So then what's left is this long sort of downhill special effects spiral toward the third show, which there's this whole sleight of hand with the giant mirror room and, where the money went and where it should have gone. And there's all of this that I am still, I think, completely in the dark on. But I don't know where was the Robin Hood in this whole thing, and so I feel like
the third part. Well, if you look at it, each of the different shows tied to each of those 3 organizations or entities that were related to that event so long ago. So the third one, it's not as clear, but it's it's the setup of Morgan Freeman's character, but it wasn't really clear. But there wasn't really a performance. They sort of showed up on the roof and
right. There was nothing to it.
there wasn't a show or anything. They just sort of lured everybody there.
And then jump off the roof and turn to money.
Right. That's why they call it money.
That's why they call it money. What?
Sorry, that's a little David Mamet I think that's from Heist with Gene Hackman.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
That's okay. So I get that. That was the other thing I think Andy and I were trying to figure out was Morgan Freeman. That whole thing where the guy, it was about the other guy underwater and the safe that didn't open.
Yeah, because he was righting the wrongs from him because the bank had done something.
Hello?
There was the bank, there was the insurance company that had backed him or something, and the safe company.
Right.
And I can't quite remember how the bank and the insurance company tied in, but obviously they did because he had to go after them.
Well, and so and forgive me, because clearly I was so frustrated by this movie that I missed this point.
Hello?
What was, Chad, you're still talking. What's up? Hello? Chad?
I don't think he's there.
He's gone. All right. So forgive me if I missed this, because clearly I missed this point. What was Morgan Freeman's, why was he the one that Rhodes wanted to see rotting in jail?
Because the first magician that he sort of did his revealing secrets of magic was the guy who then, to try to resurrect his career, does the I'm going to escape from the safe thing. So
you're saying that the entire revenge plot was centered on the fact that that his dad was pushed too far by a rogue magic journalist, magic debunker.
Yes.
That's what we're going to hang our hat on.
That's what I walked away from it. Yeah.
Now that you say that, I think that is what I recall from it, and maybe that's why I quickly forgot it, because I think it was just so bad.
Because I want more about the magic eye and the mystery, and that was the thing that upset me. Was I had a heist movie and magic, and it was like after the first show, it was like, bam, we're going to debunk this. I'm like, wait, you're supposed to save all this for the end to see how everything comes together.
Yeah.
But then I realized I actually appreciated those. Because you could actually, when they're standing on that stage in Vegas and they show some of the tricks, because those were ones where I'm like, okay, they're showing us. But later on, when Morgan Freeman's like, oh, I think I know how they did this, he just tells us a story of like, oh, well, yeah, and one of them probably went to a hospital and stole a cadaver, and they probably had this bus with this car thing. And I'm like, he has no clue. He's, as far as I know, he's making that whole thing up. Right. But we were supposed to believe it. But that one was so far out there. I thought, I don't know if I believe him as a magic debunker, because he's just telling a tale now to try to save his hide, I think. Because I couldn't make sense of that one. It didn't feel like a magic trick more than, a billionaire with lots of money to, make a little mini Hollywood movie for fun or something. I don't know.
Although, I mean, was it just me, or was that just totally obvious that Dave Franco was still alive?
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
Well, it was right before he screams, "Come on!"
Yeah,
and then drives it, like you see him turn the wheel into the bridge embankment.
Yeah.
That was not well played, and that they had gone through so much. When they do the Scooby-Doo replay, and they show that there's Woody driving the bus and has the other car on a giant truss
that nobody else is. The news helicopter for some reason
didn't notice. Yeah.
And then I would have to go back and rewatch the film, but are we still intercutting between Ruffalo chasing him and Franco driving? Because if so, that makes no sense if Franco really, zipped off way ahead of them while this dummy car was dropped out into the street.
Well, yeah, because it was attached to the front of the bus, and the bus cuts off Agent Rhodes there, and that's when he's like, I'm gonna lose him, and then they zing around, and then you see the car, but they've switched cars.
I just can't remember if we cut to Franco's face again.
Oh yeah,
because if so, that would be just a poor choice to make.
Well, again, it's another one where it's like, again, why is he acting this way?
Yeah.
because I mean, the one that really came back to me as I was walking to the theater is, I think it's Morgan Freeman says to him, why, or somebody says to him, why her, why a desk agent from whatever, and then he gets all like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I'm like, and I'm like, there's no reason for him to behave that way unless he's thinking he is expected because everybody else sees him and he's got to play a part. But I'm like, that makes no sense to me.
That was the exact same scene that I thought of. I'm like, there's no logical reason for him to be talking that way to her unless he suspects that Morgan Freeman is spying on him.
Right.
Otherwise, it absolutely makes no sense. It's just completely there for the purpose of the film for us to be tricked.
Exactly.
I think that was the thing that that I had trouble with, is that it just felt like the movie so desperately wanted to pull one over on us, a la the great movies that successfully pull ones over on us. Yeah. And they just went a bridge too far every single turn. Yeah. And eventually kind of lost track of themselves. It was not the same movie that at the end that started out. So can we just run through the Four Horsemen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because there are enjoyable moments with some of these characters that I think we should mention. Yeah.
For me, I quite liked the open and had already seen the open, right? Because this was part of the initial that was the clip that they had
but it wasn't up. It wasn't the exact same open.
It wasn't. They didn't have the hooded guy.
Yeah, because as I was watching it with my daughter, she leans over, she goes, wait a second, that hooded guy wasn't there when we saw when we saw this before online. I said, good eye.
That is a good eye, because I actually had supplanted that hooded guy in there. I had put him in there because when I saw it, I was like, especially the Dave Franco bit, I thought I remember him running into the guy on the thing. I just could have sworn that. But
your daughter can go join the eye in the magical.
She's welcome to the the magical carousel. Yes. But I particularly liked that entire opening sequence for each of the Four Horsemen. I thought that was a great setup, although it felt very much like, again, Leverage. Particularly Jesse Eisenberg's, I thought that was a great open. It was a great, strong open, and it felt like kind of the opening to a David Copperfield special, and that kind of set me up really well, and that's again what kept raising my hopes. So I thought he was strong in spite of Chadd. Chadd's, I think, a good observation that Eisenberg is having a hard time shaking his inner Zuckerberg.
Yeah, right.
I loved Woody Harrelson's bit. I loved the whole idea of him getting between, using mentalism and hypnosis to get in between, to shake down this couple of the man having an affair, and Dave Franco stealing stuff, and finally Isla Fisher really horrifically escaping the locked cage of piranhas.
And I think she pronounces it Isla, but I think she likes it when you call her Isla.
See, that's another thing that she clearly we haven't done. Isla. It's because of Madonna. It's because of Madonna. This is Madonna's fault. Isla Bonita.
You say salmon?
I do. I say salmon.
You do, don't you?
Except for when referencing Rushdie, when it's just salmon.
Salmon Rushdie. That's
good. So I like that. I thought that was a great bit.
They all had some really good scenes. I thought the fight scene with Dave Franco, Mark Ruffalo, and Michael Kelly in the apartment complex.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal fight scene. I had so much fun watching it from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
Up until we got to the road. I mean, I had so much fun watching that scene.
Oh, totally. But what is it? What setup do we have that Dave Franco is this amazing pugilist?
Well, and that's what I kept wondering. I'm like, maybe they cast him because they needed, a charismatic guy who would be there when they were doing the Four Horsemen bits. But otherwise, when he was on stage, he was so not a part of the story. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, here's the Dave Franco. This is why he did the movie, because he had so not been in the movie up until that point.
Yeah.
And I think he did fine. He's one of those actors. didn't pay a lot of attention. He was in the last sort of the Coda season of Scrubs. He was one of the doctors, and so I feel like I sort of got to know him there. He did,
he was in 21 Jump Street.
21 Jump Street and Fright Night, and I mean he's been in a lot of stuff, but and he was in Warm Bodies, recently. But
you know what he can do? They set up. He can throw cards like Ricky Jay. He can slice. What was it? A pencil and whatever. So that's when he's flinging. When he has a choice between the fireplace poker or the cards, he picks up the cards. And just like slicing into Mark Ruffalo's face. So
that was a nice touch.
It doesn't justify. Oh, we're gonna have him because we're gonna need him to throw cards at people in case we're getting chased. And yeah, he was. I think that was the only time on stage we saw him do anything was. And carry a big flashlight. Yeah, he can do that.
Well, and that's
really
it.
well.
And I guess I mean from the perspective of the story, not just from Dave Franco as a talented physical actor, but from the perspective of the story. When was there any setup that Dave Franco's character was the tough guy of the Four Horsemen?
No, I don't think Dave Franco was anything.
And suddenly,
because we know how Chad feels about the Francos.
Well, and suddenly he is amazing with his fists and jumping all over and disappearing into the curtains. And I mean, he was suddenly fantastic. And I thought was a great scene, totally out of place. It belonged into one of the Bourne movies.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was he's fast with his hands because there were several times where he's set up as the pickpocket, and I think in that fight it was handcuffing people to things. So as a street performer, somebody that can pickpockets and move quickly. I think that may have been the closest justification I could come up with of.
But apparently, so good he was eye worthy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was supposed to be the sleight of hand. Can you guys hear me still?
Yeah.
No?
Now we can.
All of a sudden we can.
No, you're good.
Okay. I noticed you guys didn't miss me at all when I was gone.
We totally missed you. We were trying to make it like you weren't even gone thing. We were trying to just make it, and now you're calling it out. So the movie magic is completely...
Movie magic is gone.
Ignore the Chad behind the curtain.
That's right. It's a magic Chad.
Well, did you guys... Okay, I'm going to ask you this. Did you like the scene when they all met at the door? Because I kind of liked that scene, although it was really fast, and you kind of got to know them really, really fast.
That's where I wanted something about the eye. Looking back, that's where, to me, it was, they have these cards. There's something going on.
With the eye.
And that's what I think would have been the key place of, what really drew them. I mean, if weird tarot card shows up in my shoe, I mean, clearly it's something that magicians know. Like, I'm going to take this girl out of my apartment because I got a tarot card in my shoe, of course.
Right.
That was the only thing that was missing to that, but it did a nice job of setting up, things. Even to the punchline later on when Jesse Eisenberg catches her, he's like, "Oh yeah, I guess you did lose a little weight." There was going to the discussion of not fitting through the trap door. I was like, okay, there was again more of those characters. As I said, I wanted more of that.
Yeah.
And aside from the stage, we don't really see much of the dynamic of those characters, and that it started off great.
Yeah.
Well, I like Woody. I think Woody, though, I felt like he was really kind of his own thing that kind of...
Well, he's always good.
Yeah.
He was so good. Like, I felt like... what was this? When he was actually first in the, the interrogation room with Mark Ruffalo.
Yes, I thought that was a great scene.
Brilliant.
That was a great scene.
It was so, like, the audience was just laughing. Every time Woody Harrelson said stuff, I mean, everybody laughed because he was so on. He was his character. But I didn't quite understand why, they revealed too much through dialogue, why they didn't like each other, which you'd never want to do. Like, I felt like, I want to say Mark Zuckerberg. It's Jesse. Let me just clear this up. I like Jesse Eisenberg. I didn't want to make it sound like I don't like Jesse Eisenberg. He's great. But I felt like they gave him dialogue to explain their relationship because it was just too much to actually have a relationship.
Then why did they need the relationship?
Right. Like, you don't even know why they have to have this relationship. Why they all have to be together. And
it was just for the weight loss joke.
Well,
Exactly.
I mean, otherwise,
that's a writer. That's a writer who fell in love with a bit right there.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was. It looked like it felt like four teenagers that got together and they had these really funny lines and like, let's figure out how we can put them in a movie together.
Yeah.
But Isla, Isla's character I felt was always on. She was always in a show. And
you mean Isla? Are you talking about Isla?
Oh yeah, Isla.
I don't even hear her if you don't.
She lives on an island.
Isla. She's an island. Curse you, Madonna.
Madonna. But she didn't come to me like she didn't come across to me as a person that off of the stage was much different. Like she was just louder. And I didn't feel like she just seemed like she was performing.
She's just louder off stage?
Like she's louder on stage. Sorry. She's louder on stage so everybody could get to hear her. And then when she's off stage, she's still sort of like performing her thing. And I didn't get a sense of who she was really. I felt like that one place that they all met at, by the stairs when they're at the door. That was the only time I felt a little bit like, oh, I'd really like to get to know her. But, and then like you said, like the same thing with Dave Franco's character. Like, wow, who is this other guy? He seems like kind of like a cool, charming guy. And then he does that whole scene and you're like, oh, you're right. He's the sleight of hand guy that can do all these other tricks that are never shown on any of the acts in their show.
That's right. His skill is the guy whose skills are totally wasted in this film.
Wasted. Which, I don't know. I mean, I felt like this script was not finished, was not completed. It could have been. Okay, here's my question to you guys. If you could write the script, what would you... First of all, I would take out the carousel.
Did you guys need, given this film, did you need a big turnabout at the end? I mean,
No.
Obviously we need to figure out who the guy in the hood is, but really this could have been, I think this movie may have been just way too complex for itself. And there's so much I didn't need, so many storylines I didn't need. I could have been perfectly satisfied with this being what we expected it to be, a magic caper film of these four people who came together with these skills explicitly to steal stuff from people, and this is their story.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that this became this tangled in this web of family deceit over the course of 20 years. I was not more satisfied for the depth of that story.
No, that story itself really felt like the forced turn, like in a ghost story, where all of a sudden you realize, oh, it's really, the neighbor who had killed her 20 years ago. It's like you just killed the whole excitement about this ghost story by all of a sudden now it's just this present day, these other people that are all around. That's how I felt. Was it like Stir of Echoes or something with Kevin Bacon,
Right.
like 10 years ago or whatever. It was one of those films where it's like it sets up something that's really interesting, but then all of a sudden it throws all these other elements in it that just become, it clutters the story. The whole thing with Morgan Freeman was stuff we did not need. That whole Thaddeus Bradley thing was just not needed at all. Likewise, like you're saying, with the whole backstory of Rhodes' daddy who died in a safe, it just, it didn't fit. The idea that you just presented of telling this story about these magicians, these four horsemen who go on this Robin Hood, crazy time, stealing banks in the middle of Vegas, of stealing money from banks in France and giving it to all the audience members. That was a much more exciting story. And if they could have made that the film, I would have probably loved it.
Yeah, because that's what we were sort of promised through the trailer. It's like, here's these magicians, they steal from a bank in France, and it's like, then you get that line of like, in the interrogation room, he's like, well, you're not going to press charges against us because otherwise the FBI is going to have to state that basically they believe in magic. We've got an airtight alibi, and that's an interesting story. They keep pulling off heists.
Absolutely.
That the only way to explain it's magic. And
Steve,
that's what we wanted to see.
You are exactly right. I thought that sequence was the absolute, that's where the film was at its logical best.
Yeah.
And I think the bar was high at that point when he says exactly that line. The only way for you to figure or to prove this is to, is to admit that, you believe in magic. I thought that is the whole premise. Please just play that out. Let us see what that's like, and see how the police actually and law enforcement actually addresses this. That's like, this becomes a film that is an argument of faith. And I want to see that played out on screen and on stage, and they absolutely dropped the ball.
And that's when they still had the magicians as the protagonists of the film. Like, those were the people we were following. Right. And from that point forward, that's when everything starts unraveling, because all of a sudden the magicians become this just act that we tap into only through the FBI's eyes, because all of a sudden now we're following Mark Ruffalo because we need to be kept in the dark as much as he is. And all of a sudden now we're getting played. And that's when it totally falls apart, because we lose the people that we're rooting for.
Yes.
Which are who?
Well, the magicians.
It was the magicians.
Are we rooting for the magicians?
At that point, we were. At that point, I totally was. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I think that's the whole thing. Well, that you don't know whether to even root for the magicians.
Well, I certainly was then. I mean, we're talking about the interrogation scene, and at that point, I was 100% behind Eisenberg and company.
Gotcha. Okay. And although I did feel that Eisenberg, and I felt like the clip that I saw on the trailer was different than the clip that I saw there, because I felt like he was mean. It felt like he was arrogant, and mean in a way that was inappropriate to what was happening. Like it felt like he had a personal vendetta or a personal grudge against Mark Ruffalo's character. I didn't feel like a lot of what he was doing made sense in that interrogation room. It was just like he hated the law or something.
I think there's something to that, and that gets to your Social Network comparison too, because in the Social Network we had that same sort of response from him, and yet it was earned, because you could tell that there was such a personal violation, that he took this as such a personal violation in the Social Network. And here, what I felt like it was earned was crafty arrogance and not spiteful arrogance. Like I don't feel like we were quite at spiteful yet.
Yeah,
but it did come across spiteful. And now that you say that, Chad, I really agree with you that I felt that he did come across very hateful, and thinking back on it, was like it really didn't make sense that he was acting that way.
And you know what we get lost, I think, to that point, what we get lost in is the flash of the handcuff switch, right? Which is great, but what is underneath that, and what you lose, is the fact that he boiled up to a lot of rage awful fast, that without that special effect going on in there, we likely would have been left actually thinking, why is he so mad?
Yeah. And the phone switch,
Yeah.
Right.
So, no, I absolutely get that. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so how about, did anyone else sit there through this movie and think, wow, somebody's really excited about having Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman on screen again? Are we getting a little tired of this?
Well, did you? Okay, let me ask you this, Pete.
Like, did you that scene in the bar when they come together? It's like, God, let's set up the camera so we can have another fantastic quintessential scene that can only happen because Michael Caine and Morgan Freeman are on screen together again.
Boy, I tell you though, was it just me, or did Morgan Freeman look ages older in this?
Oh my
film?
gosh, that's what I was going to ask you guys. Did you feel? I felt like Morgan Freeman was talking slow. I don't know if you guys saw it, but like when he was talking, it felt like he was talking like a half a pace or a full pace from what he normally speaks. It didn't feel like his energy felt low, and it felt like different to me. It wasn't the same. It felt like when he walked into rooms, he felt slow and older. And maybe that was his character.
I didn't notice because of the earrings.
and the extra who got to cling to him the whole time.
Yeah.
His assistant.
Right. Okay, so this film was. What do we know about how this film was written? We know. I mean, it's Ed Solomon and Boaz Yakin, and I think who else has a credit? Edward Rycourt. What do we know about this? The story credits go to Boaz Yakin and Edward Rycourt. Yeah. But what do we know about this? I mean, is there? Please tell me, Andy. You're the one who has the writing source. Please tell me that there was struggle and discord among the team who wrote this movie, because that would actually in some way redeem it for me.
I don't know. I do see that you've got the ampersand between Boaz Yakin and Edward Reichort, meaning they worked as a team, and then Ed Solomon has the and, which means he came on and modified it afterward as a writer coming in to clean up the script, or beforehand. I'm assuming that Ed Solomon came in afterwards, since Boaz Yakin and Edward Reichort were also credited with the story. But the way that the WGA credits things, it's always such a murky quagmire trying to figure out who did what and everything, and without really knowing the backstory, it's hard to say. Boaz Yakin's certainly been around a bit more. I mean, he more than Edward Reichort, certainly, who it looks like this is his only credit. But Boaz Yakin, he's written and directed a good number of projects. Not anything I would say is impressive. Things like Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time, Dirty Dancing, Havana Nights, From Dusk Till Dawn 2, Texas Blood Money. Nothing that it really excites me.
I note you didn't mention The Rookie.
Okay, there's one. There's one.
No, you need to clarify. That's the Charlie Sheen.
Yes, Charlie
rookie.
Sheen.
That's true.
Not the
That's
Dennis
true.
Quaid rookie. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah. I should mention it, since it is that one.
He also, however, directed Remember the Titans.
Yeah, which isn't one of my favorites.
Which isn't one of my favorites either. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm having trouble.
And he has produced, he and I think it's Eli Roth. They have I don't know if they still do, but they had a production company, did their little horror movies and everything, and that was some of the stuff that he produced. The Hostel 2, some of those movies with Eli Roth.
Yeah,
right. Ed Solomon, he's been around a lot longer, and has been involved in a lot of bigger projects like Men in Black, both the Bill and Ted's movies,
Super Mario Brothers.
Exactly. What planet are you from? Mom and Dad Save the World, aka Prometheus.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I keep forgetting that.
Wow, yes.
That amazing scene.
How could you forget? So I don't know. To me, it seems like a script that they had some rework done on. I don't know much more about it. There's not, at this point, since the film just came out, I don't think there's a whole lot that I've read about how it came to be and who did what and everything. I don't know about any trouble or anything. So who knows what murky depths this script had to go through to become what it was that disappointed us all.
What was the general audience reaction? Chadd, you already mentioned that people were laughing at some of those scenes, but as you think about your audience, each of you, when you were sitting there, what do you feel like people walked away with?
They clapped. Like everybody at the end of mine, clapped. They stood up and clapped. And I sat there going, "Are you guys insane?"
Wait, they stood up for
real?
They
stood up, and the people behind us, there was a bunch of people that stood up and clapped at the end of it.
Because they were leaving, or just because?
Good, it's over. Good, we can go home now. No. It felt like they clapped at different parts of the movie. The whole cuff thing. Everybody goes.
Very enthusiastic audience.
Oh, they were, and
they
clapped at that. They clapped, and it just seemed like it didn't matter that. Oh, they all just disappeared into a carousel. Oh well, that's really pretty cool. And then the key thing, and at the end, they all clapped and they're like, what? They're like, whistling, whatever. Yahoo, that was great. And I sat there thinking, geez, are they clapping because they enjoyed that last trick? Because they were all caught off guard. We all were, but they especially enjoyed the fact that, oh my gosh, it's Mark Ruffalo. Oh. And you could people were whispering and talking about it, and so it was really interactive. My crowd was.
What about you guys in Phoenix?
Mine wasn't quite as excited as Chadd's was. It was definitely a full house, but I think there were a few people clapping at the end. I mean, they were definitely into it as the film went along, laughing and everything. There was one line that I wish I could remember what it was. Oh, it was when Mark Ruffalo was actually putting the airborne into his coffee. Actually, one person found that really funny and laughed and everybody really got to enjoy laughing at that guy, because that was probably one of the funniest parts of the movie, when that guy laughed at that. Other than that, it wasn't anything to write home about.
I saw that it was a very full house. No, when we got a big laugh, our crowd got a big laugh out of Mark Ruffalo running on the stage in New Orleans and yelling "freeze," and then all the hypnotized football players tackling him. Other than that, it was pretty quiet through the end. There were a few people behind me that were like, "Oh yeah, we went on vacation. We were at that bridge. Yeah, that's the way it is." And it was more about the facts of like being a tour guide talking about the bridge. And then as the credits were rolling, some people were going, I'm a little confused, I heard from a few people. So there was some applause a little bit, but there was some good energy in the theater, but at the end it felt like there were some people kind of like trying to make sense of everything. So
that was I think similar to what I experienced in Portland. It was a very crowded theater, which I thought was a great sign. And I saw it in the middle of the day on a Friday, and it was like that kind of early afternoon show, and it was pretty crowded. A bunch of nerds who were playing hooky, and it was very enthusiastic going in and very somber walking out. Like there was just no energy in the crowd. It just felt like very kind of dry. So I sort of feel like it captured the general tone of our collective experience. One of the real highlights I think for me was it was not the CG magic. It was not the flowy curtains coming from Isla's costume or whatever. It was the 3D projection mapping that they did on the building in the final sequence. And I I've been a huge fan of this technology for a long time. I don't know. I think the leader in this space has long been NU Former, NU Former. And they have been, they've been long doing these major advertising campaigns for the big brands, essentially redesigning buildings with 3D projection. You can find them at newformer.com. I don't know if NU Former is the team that actually developed the 3D projection map for the building in the final show. If you guys know more than I do, I'd love to hear it. I've been trying to figure out who actually did that, but it is a fantastic effect sequence, and I just love how they rip that building apart,
cool.
virtually, and to know that is a practical effect, like that stuff you can see right now and on buildings around the world, and it's very, very cool stuff.
How do you spell that? U Former? Is
NU,
it just
NU, N-U.
Oh, NU Former.
NU Former. And it's actually better to go on YouTube and actually do some searching on YouTube for 3D projection mapping. They can do motion capture mapping now, too. I mean, it's just really cool stuff. VW, Mercedes, Starbucks, they've been using them forever. It's I've been surprised. I was telling Andy when we talked the other day, I've just really been very surprised that this technology hasn't been used in a film yet, because it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah.
And honestly, the stuff you'll see on YouTube is better in many respects than I think what they did. It's even more sort of stunning.
Wow,
it's good stuff. That was a real highlight for me. The visuals, I think, a general highlight. One of the things that Andy and I have been talking about on the other, the magic films, The Prestige and The Illusionist, was the sense of the practical versus the CG magic, and the sense of the treatment of magic in these films that are ostensibly about magic. What was your sense, guys, about how they treated magic? Did you feel like they treated the magic with any sort of respect, or was it more of a set dressing, Steve?
That was the thing that really bothered me about this. Is they're introduced as these street performers, which is up close magic, and then we end up with like this $1 billion special effects stuff where I didn't get a sense of like that the magic was this, aside from the interrogation room, and even that was like, okay, the handcuff keys and the Pepsi can and all of that. Just the way it was shot and everything, I didn't get a sense of like there was a trick there. It was more, just, we're going to edit this and it's going to look like something magical happened, or we're going to have some CG. I didn't get a real solid sense of the performance of magic. And, I just felt like yeah, you buy a bunch of stuff and high tech things, and you can get away with whatever you want. For me, it did not portray what I expect out of a film about magic in the way it handled the magic tricks.
Chat, Andy, who, what?
I felt like, it's really hard to do, I think, magic in a film because magic, film is already magical. And so it's hard to decide, like I think what Steve was saying, it's hard to decipher what's actual magic. Is this a trick or is this something that's, how do we respect what's actually being performed, I guess? Because you don't really, it's not set up that way. It's set up in this they set it up in a very technological fashion. So right in the beginning, part of it was this technological thing when they walk into that room and there's this like, the water spills and there's this thing. Is that magic? Oh no, it's technology so you're not sure what is, even from the film's point of view, you're like, okay, you're watching a lot of special effects going on. And you're going, what are we watching? What is magical? And so I think it's hard to have that wonder and have that kind of amusement. I mean, when you're talking about The Illusionist and more so, I think The Prestige, those things were set in a day where, okay, we're kind of, the setting is even sort of like, hey, we're allowed to believe in magic because there is no technology, and here we are set in a place where, okay, well, how is the trick done? This is interesting. The focus is the magic, whereas this doesn't allow the focus to be magic because it's technology and magic, and so I think it's kind of hard. That's how I got it. It was hard for me to be amused by the magic.
Well, and Pete, you and I were talking about this a little bit. In particular, the thing that bugged me is like, if you're gonna do a magic show, at least make it look like it's a magic show. I mean, we have that scene when in the first Four Horsemen show when Isla Fisher pulls something out and it turns into this giant flowing cape that swirls around on the stage and then wishes off to reveal this giant, teleportation device. It's like the whole thing looks so CG, and it's so unbelievable that it would be something a magician would do. That to me bugs me. It's just like, if you're doing a film about magicians, at least make it look like something that they could really do, as opposed to something that's so far-fetched that it's not ever believable as stage magic. Likewise with the giant bubbles that she's floating around with in the air. I'm like, maybe that is something that magicians have worked out, but I had such a hard time with the bubbles. I just could. I felt like I was watching Oz again. I'm like, come on, what is it with these bubbles these days?
I also had problems with the bubbles. I think my take on it is very similar to Steve. It's this idea that you give me a setup that they're practical street performers. It's this idea that they've betrayed their own perspective on magic, through the course of the film. But the specific trick I had the hardest time with was I think as a result of having watched The Prestige in too close a proximity to this film. In The Prestige, we have the disappearing bird trick with the collapsing cage, right? Where they do the bird's in the cage, they lift the cape off the napkin off the cage, and the cage is collapsed, and the bird is gone. And it turns out that the bird was actually smashed and killed in the bottom of this cage, right? That was the late 1800s trick. And so then they put this guy from France in the giant smashing machine to send him to the Parisian bank, and I'm thinking that dude just got smashed in the bottom of this giant pneumatic press. Right. There is no way that would actually happen. So I was a little bit stunned by the horror aspect of this film.
Yeah,
I don't. So you guys need to see this movie again now that you know how I think.
That's right.
That's true. I didn't make that correlation, Pete.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah.
So you think
poor smashed Frenchman at the bottom of the theater.
So you think they should have had a little blood come out just so the audience would have gone,
just
what?
a little red spray.
I mean, they did that with the piranha scene.
Yeah. They did.
Which if you guys know anything about piranha, they've done tests and studies, and really, they don't eat people like that.
That you have to ask shows how little you know about what I know about piranhas. I don't know what you know about piranhas, but let me school you on piranha.
I'd been better if they would have dumped a shark in there. Just a big fat shark.
Just one giant shark that doesn't even actually fit.
Or a whale. Just have a whale. And they're like, kill a whale and kill the person.
See, so this movie's getting better already.
It is. We've made it better.
All right. The movie, actually, I'm trying to figure out how it's doing on the charts for opening weekend. It doesn't look like it's cracked the top 10.
I see as of yesterday, it had made 10 million.
It's got to be doing better than After Earth.
They were projecting it to make, I think, 27.5 million opening weekend. The budget for the film was 75 million, the production budget.
Mm-hmm.
So, they'll have a long way to go to get up to that number. I mean, they can probably get it internationally, but we'll see how they do.
Wow.
I would say that if you can't get enough of Isla Fisher, you should be watching the new season of Arrested Development.
Oh, is she on there live?
I got her plow through that.
She plays Ron Howard's one of Ron Howard's children, and of course Ron Howard is the narrator of the show and also a character in the show, and it ends up being very fun. He narrates himself. It's brilliant. I think this is a terrific season. I'm thrilled that they're doing it. And they do. Is anybody watching it? Anybody?
I've started. I haven't gotten very far yet.
Have you seen the gimmick that they do with the
I've gotten one episode.
Stealing. Have you seen the watermark? Have you noticed the watermark?
Yeah. What's up with that?
It is such, it's such great insider stuff with this show. You watch this show 1,000 times, you get new stuff out of it every time. In this case, I was driven quite mad by this watermark, which doesn't happen the whole time through. It just seemed to be random, and it says, what is it? It's like Stream Thief, Stream Thief Pro or something.
Yeah,
and it's a watermark as if you had ripped the like a DVD. And it put this watermark over the actual screen, and it turns out those sequences or that watermark only occurs on very specific sequences. They're only sequences that came from prior seasons. They're flashback seasons. Now, of course, this show used to be on Fox, and now it's on Netflix. And so the gimmick is that they couldn't get the rights to actually rebroadcast prior seasons.
So
they ripped them from themselves to actually do it on the Netflix thing. But it's such an inside joke. Now that I watched 3 or 4 episodes of it, and I was pulling my hair out that this is ridiculous that Netflix would not catch this.
That's what I've been saying. So that's hilarious.
Now it's actually really quite amusing, and it doesn't stop.
It still will bug me seeing it, but that's genius, though.
Yeah, it is genius. So anyhow, check out the new season of Arrested Development streaming on Netflix. They're not a sponsor of this show, but it's genuinely a great show. So
it is.
All right,
genuinely.
Hey, thanks everybody for taking the time to talk about this. What are we gonna do? Because I think we either need to hang up our
I blame Chadd.
Hang up the show.
I blame Chadd. He talked us out of Star Trek.
Well, it still wouldn't have gone well with Star Trek.
Yeah, that's true.
and let's say predominantly because of you, Steve.
What?
Buzzkill joy.
I just have to tell you guys, after I saw Now You See Me last night, I was so just broken over it. I went and saw the Fast and Furious 6.
I actually want to see that. It looks fun.
It was really good. It's really good.
Why are you saying that? Are you being serious about this?
I'm not kidding you. I went to see that with but see, I went to go see it going, okay, this will be kind of fun to watch, but that would have been a fun one to talk about. That would have been really fun to talk about.
And you know
that sounds strange to say, but it's really true.
It does sound strange to say. Yes.
It does.
It sounds strange to hear.
I think possibly one of my favorite films of the year thus far, which I never would have expected, is Pain and Gain.
What, really?
Right? I never ever would have expected that, but
really?
I had so much fun watching that movie that it's
wow.
It's
I think don't they revoke your film school cred for liking a Michael Bay film?
Well, I've got Taxi Driver on my side, I guess.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg, through the entire preview of that, looked like he was holding his breath to make himself look that big. Looked like he was just like puffing on his chest. He looked. Did you guys think? It didn't look.
Oh, that's too good.
He looked like a balloon version of
Tough
himself.
to put him next to The Rock. It's tough to put him next to The Rock. It's
huge.
nice to know that even guys like Mark Wahlberg, need to puff up occasionally.
That's right.
That makes me feel better.
We need to do a secret show about Fast and Furious 6.
A secret show.
A secret show.
That's how much you stand by this commitment to Fast and Furious. It has to be a secret.
No, it'll be a secret show, and then everybody will want to hear in on it. Anybody listening now will, know it's a secret show.
Yeah, it'll totally go viral when we don't tell anybody about it.
That's right. That's what happens.
What are we're gonna hang up now because we're gonna talk about next time.
We're gonna flick chart it real quick.
Oh, we got a flick chart. Of course, this will be quick.
Yeah. Now You See Me or Cloud Atlas. I will go with Cloud Atlas on this one.
Oh my gosh! Can I throw up at both of those ideas? Let me just throw up now. Jeez.
I haven't seen Cloud Atlas, so
Cloud Atlas is 3 hours. Cloud Atlas is 3 hours of Now You See Me.
No, Cloud Atlas is ambitious and fully entertaining. Now You See Me is a mess that you can't, you don't want to think about afterwards.
Cloud Atlas isn't a mess.
It's a mess, but it's an ambitious mess, and
You're right. It is an ambitious mess. You're right. Okay, maybe Cloud Atlas.
It's messy, not a mess. Cloud Atlas for me.
All right. Thank you. Clute. Now You See Me or Clute. Pete,
Clute.
you and I think, are still the only ones who have seen Clute. Key Largo. I'm going with that.
Oh yes.
Oh yes.
Pick movies we've all seen.
We can't. It's automated.
Yeah. It's based off of things they've reviewed.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Here we go. Now You See Me or Alien Resurrection. I'm going with Alien Resurrection on this one
because it's got aliens in it.
That's right.
And they're both directed by French filmmakers. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna go with Alien Resurrection again. Myself.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah. That's yes. Okay.
Man, this is a race to the bottom. I love it.
You'd rather have poop on a stick or poop on a log?
Now You See Me or Marty. I can't believe Marty is below Alien Resurrection.
Oh my goodness.
You guys hated Marty. You guys just ripped that one.
I didn't. I couldn't.
I enjoyed it more.
Well, you enjoyed it, but said there wasn't much there. And I haven't seen Marty.
Very light. It's very light. I still would probably go with Marty over this.
Wow. Okay.
I've never seen Marty.
Yeah. In the context of this conversation, Marty is the.
It's more entertaining.
What is that really?
I don't know.
It doesn't offend me.
It doesn't offend. Okay.
This is a Casablanca moment, right? I mean, this is when
this is when
you detest me, don't you? If I gave you any thought, I probably would. That's Marty to me. Like if I thought about it, I'd probably hate it, but it's really not offensive.
Okay.
Here we go. Now You See Me or Rush.
Wow.
Yes, it has jumped straight to the bottom.
Wow. Because I'll take Now You See Me over.
I will take
Now You See Me over Rush.
All right.
So it's the second.
So second to last. 90 out of 91.
Wow.
So wait, we said this was worse than like 42, which we said was just a really bland after-school special.
I didn't get to be on that one. I can't believe you guys.
That's because
wrote that
this one
together.
pisses me off.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and 42 may have had the balance thrown had Chadd been on here, because for him that was a spiritual awakening, and he didn't get to be a part of that
show. It was a good movie.
And I agree. I think this one, it tries to do something and then it just completely undermines itself all the way through to the point where it's. Yeah. All right.
I think Now You See Me is willfully disobedient.
Willfully disobedient.
It's that child. It's that child.
I think it's just, again, there's a bias against the Francos on this show board. I think that's what it is.
I am not gonna be saddled with that, because again,
I think it was Chadd that had the issue.
It was. You're right. He is, and it's Tom that has the issue with people in white who wear white, and astronauts or things that fall. I don't know. This has been a real treat as always, gentlemen, and so I deeply look forward to next month's film, which likely will also be terrible. Given our track record,
so please come to the show.
Come and watch Pete cry.
Is it? I don't want to talk about it. We're gonna hang up because it's gonna be a surprise.
Yes.
And so we're gonna hang up and keep talking. So those, thank you for listening, everybody, and Steve, Chadd, Andy, thank you guys so much as always.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you. I'm Michael Caine.
I'm Morgan Freeman.
And I'm not related to these guys.
You're my son.